Growing up, my best friend above all else, Nintendo 64, late night Dr. Peppers and pillow fights and all that stuff, she had introduced sexual abuse as a game, just something that was between her and I, and that was something that continued throughout, my whole childhood. That's something that I thought was normal, and so any apprehension I felt about that, I stifled because I trusted her. With that, I think, came a lot of paranoia and anxiety. I think I experienced depression as a kid, whether or not I would call it that at the time. Having an unease about myself and about other people, and just, keeping that, secret from everybody, and from, our youth group friends and from my parents, and trying to, make sure everything was okay and safe. When you stifle those things down, when you stifle secrets down, when you stifle feelings down, and depression or anxiety or whatever it is, those things come out in other ways. And eventually, probably around middle school and high school, I had cut off my relationship with her. I'd finally been able to admit to myself that was something that, I wasn't comfortable with, and something I didn't want in my life anymore. And so pushing that down and carrying that secret with me, dealing with, feelings of depression, not being able to sleep ever, just really erratic eating behaviors, and starting to go through puberty and have all these life changes, I really started to hate me and my body, and have like an unease with just myself as a person. So eventually that developed into and turned into anorexia. It was something that totally enveloped my whole life. When people talk about anorexia or bulimia, you just think it's a diet that's gotten out of control, or something that somebody chooses to do. And where my actions were a decision, and I chose to restrict or to purge or to, this, that, or the other. The way my mind was, and the thought processes and the difficulty I went through, was not a choice at all. Having worked through a lot of my struggle with anorexia, having gone to counseling, and, doing the whole shebang of ending up in the hospital, and, really trying to address that head on, I dealt with a lot of those symptoms and, the behavioral aspects of things. I still deal with the depression. I still deal with having, anxiety come over me. And a lot of it is still related to food, where it may be something difficult is happening in my life that comes up with me wanting to recontrol food, to want to, restrict again, to want to take back that hold that I had over my body. I think sparking a conversation about mental health is one of the most important things we can do, and I would want to encourage anybody that has been affected by this or deals with it themselves to, I know it's hard, but to be vulnerable and be brave and bold and talk about it. It's the only way that we see healing. If you had a broken leg and somebody just told you, get up, walk it off, you're fine, like, can't you just, go for a jog, it'll feel better. Obviously we would laugh at them. That's ridiculous. And so talking through these issues, making them, taking the stigma away, making them something normal to talk about, that this is mental illness. It's not just that I'm oversensitive or, don't want to talk about diets. It's something that I deal with and fight against, and am trying to find health in.
So whenever I first came to college is whenever I found out I had anxiety. And I didn't really tell anybody about it because it was embarrassing. It's you go to college and people are all about the party scene, and I got to college and I was homesick and I was having panic attacks all the time. As a child, I had some nervous habits. I bite my nails all the time. I pick at them until they bleed, and I have done that for as long as I can remember. When my uncle committed suicide, I was 13. And it was really hard. He was a really big part of my life and my dad's best friend. I'm a daddy's girl, and so to see my dad struggle the way he did was hard. And so forgiving him was a big step, and a big part of doing that was talking to him. I would go to the cemetery a lot and just talk to him and tell him how angry I was. And then I started to I got into college and started to deal with my own panic and anxiety, and just realized how kind of, it's been cast in a light in our society that makes it embarrassing to talk about your feelings. Going through that experience, I kind of understood a little bit more maybe how he was feeling or the process. But, just like you should get to the gym and you should take care of your body, you need to take care of your mind. It's the most, I feel like it's the most important part of you, It's where your thoughts and everything generates from, and it's not something to be ashamed of.
If I don't have something to worry about, I will make something up. I'll take something that's small and trivial and make it a giant thing. It'll send me into panic attacks if I think about the vastness of the universe and what I'm going through. It'll send me into hysterics for no reason. I remember whenever I was in the worst of places and I was having trouble talking to people about what was going on with me, I met a girl that I was working with, and when we started talking about the anxiety that we went through and the depression that we went through, I told her that whenever I was a kid, whenever I would have panic attacks, I would slap myself really hard to pull myself out of it. And she said that she did the exact same thing growing up, which was really weird to me because I thought I was the only person that did those things. But whenever I actually met somebody else who went through the same things and did the same things and had the same tics and triggers that I did, it really made me feel a little less crazy. It helped me find normalcy in my illness.
I grew up with 3 siblings, and I was the youngest one, and it was kind of always the 3 of them and me. Growing up was kind of a challenge for me because it was very difficult for me to kind of find my identity with them because they were all very outspoken and pretty well liked, and I was just kind of in the background for the most part and just kind of there. When my parents were getting a divorce, I met this guy named Sam Torres, and he was awesome. I asked him to be my mentor, and he was kind of like my father figure through my high school years. But later on that same year that I met him, about 7 or 8 months later after we met, and we've been hanging out a lot, Sam died in a motorcycle accident. Later on, I was diagnosed with severe depression and OCD disorder. During my time with dealing with depression, I also suffered from insomnia. A large part from the depression, a large part was from also OCD, because my brain would just trigger these thoughts in my head while I was going to sleep. It's just like a movie projector would just flip on every time my head would hit the pillow, and all these thoughts would just start racing around in my mind, and I would start connecting. Sometimes good memories would connect to bad memories, and then they're no longer good memories, It just worsens your depression, because then you don't have sleep, and so you're not thinking straight, and so you get more depressed because you're not getting sleep, and it's just a downward spiral. I'm a pretty intellectual guy, and so I think things very logically. And whenever I was in that spot of considering suicide and the complete loneliness, that was the most logical thing to do. And that's something that whenever I reason my options and stuff like that, I wasn't thinking clearly, and it's not the right thing to do. I started going to therapy, and that was super helpful. It was weird, because when I started going to therapy, there are things that had been in my head that I was dealing with, but actually saying it out loud and then having him repeat the things that I was saying back to me, that alone gave me the perspective to be like, you know what? Things do get better. But I just started taking it literally one step at a time. If that meant just sitting up out of my bed, and that just meant moving my feet to the floor, and standing up, getting dressed, brushing my teeth, focusing on just doing one thing at a time, it helps.
I was in an abusive relationship. I just got out of it about 3 or 4 months ago, and it started out great. For about 6 months, it was great, and then it started off more so of the mental and emotional side of it, making me feel like everything was my fault, and that that I wasn't doing enough to make the relationship what it should be. The name calling started. And that can just make you feel real crappy when you get called all of these names that you're not. After that was going on for a while, it escalated a little bit, and I experienced some of the physical aspect of it, and it makes you feel like you're worthless. You wonder how somebody who can tell you that they love you so much, and someone that can tell you that they want to spend the rest of their life with you, you wonder how they can treat you that way, how they can treat you like you're no better than, you know, the trash on the bottom of their shoe. And that's how it makes you feel. It makes you feel absolutely worthless. And what I've learned is it's not me. It was never about me, and it won't ever be about me when it comes to that certain relationship. And for me, I lean on my faith a lot, and it's been something that it's kind of been an amazing journey, because I feel like God is kind of wiping the slate clean, and now it's just working on my heart, and it can be hard. I think God can wreck your heart sometimes, but He's doing it to prepare you for a beautiful life.
So my story's a little bit different. I didn't grow up with a mental health issue. Mine was pretty much the cause of life trauma, things that had happened to me throughout my life, throughout my childhood. And so a lot of people would have called it dissociative identity disorder. Ashley and I were just talking about suicide a few days ago, and we were talking about depression, and that there's clinical depression, there's seasonal depression. You know, there's different types of depressions. And the same thing with multiple personality syndrome, you know, where somebody might have a very breaking away, where they are just not who they are, and they step into roles. With somebody in my situation, mine was very emotional. When I was molested, when I was a child, I never allowed myself to get past that. I just kind of shut that part of my life off, and then I just kept moving along. But then when something would happen that triggered that little girl that was hidden in that compartment, then all of a sudden I would break down and become a child. Literally, I would throw a fit like a child. I would go into the corner like a child. The things that I would do were very childlike, because as a child, you really don't have the coping ability to be able to process that a grown man just did these things to you. There were many, many things that my husband and I would get involved with, you know, intimacy-wise, where, you know, I would just be very uncomfortable, and I would have a total meltdown, and he would say, you know, I'm right here for you, can you not just see me? And long story short, we got into an argument one time, but it triggered that little bitty girl inside of me, and it made me feel very, very scared. And he was just trying to help me. I started crying, and I turned around and I ran out of the room. And when I ran out of the room, I ran to my closet, shut off the light, and hid behind my wedding dress. And I stayed there crying. And I remember while I was sitting there crying behind my wedding dress, I felt like I was about 5 years old, hiding from someone who was trying to hurt me. And I was in the fetal position behind my wedding dress crying. And that's what a child does. When a child's throwing a temper tantrum or they're upset about something, the first thing they do is they run off to their room and they throw a fit. And that's exactly what I kept doing. It's because I was still hanging on to that behavior pattern, because I hadn't healed from it yet. I had an abortion many, many years back. At this particular clinic, they give you a pill and you just kind of pass your baby at home. You go home and you kind of do everything very much in private. But I went to the bathroom and I did everything they said that I was gonna do, and I passed not a blob of tissue, I actually passed what looked like a baby. That was an absolute disconnect for me. I completely disconnected. I knew I disconnected. I can tell you the time of day where I was sitting. And I remember looking down at my hands and thinking, what did I do? Oh my God, and just completely shutting off everything. Over this 18-year course, I'd always have this bathroom moment where I'd go back to the bathroom, I'd see the girl sitting on the toilet, but I didn't like her and I didn't want to deal with her. I would see her and then I would be completely afraid of her, because I didn't want to go and deal with the pain that she was feeling that I left her behind in. I was laying in bed and I heard the Lord pretty much say, if you'll let me meet you in that place, I can heal that place for you. And I started weeping, and when I say the darkest, saddest, most emotional place, that probably has been it. And I saw him walk with me into the bathroom, and I looked over, and remember, I'm disassociated, so she's she and I'm me. And I look over at her and he puts his hand on my shoulder and he says, it's okay, we're gonna do this together. and I'm still holding my baby on this toilet seat and not knowing what to do with it. And all of a sudden he takes the toilet paper and he just ungently folds it and he holds it up to me. And when he holds it up to me, what I see is not a past blob of tissue, it's a baby who's looking at me saying, "Mommy, it's time for you to let go. If you'll let go, you can be free." And he's holding it, and then I hear him say to me, "Take him." And so I took him. I could smell him, I could feel him, I was kissing him, and the way that he was looking at me was so healing. Then he said, "Okay, it's time to go now." And so he took my baby and he said, "We'll see you soon." And he walked out of the room. And my whole dark world that I had been walking in all of these years literally turned to light. And in an instant, what I had been trying to do for 18 years to get past that bathroom scene moment, God literally showed up and just did in 30 minutes. And so what was the darkest place in my life ended up being one of the most amazing places of my life.
Do you have any goofy dance
God,
moves?
talk about vulnerable. Like, I know, geez Louise.
Yeah.
No, because I just can't be goofy like that. I'm a serious chick.
Are we doing B-roll right now? Is that what we're doing? What is this for?
Just catch the bananas. Do the Harry Potter expecto patronum thing.
When the dementors of depression come into your life, expecto patronum them.
Tell me about your baby.
I'm having a baby. This is how I chose to announce it to the world.
I'm Jamie, and I am fighting hopelessness with honesty. Expecto patronum!
I'm Camry, and I'm fighting hopelessness with honesty.
I'm Leslie, and I'm fighting hopelessness with honesty.
Oh, Savannah.
I'm Zach, and I'm here to spark a conversation about mental health.
I'm Taylor, and I'm here to spark a conversation about mental health.
I'm Kim, and I'm here to spark a conversation about mental health.